Good day, brothers. Now let me present to you the part 2 of the 8th report from the Medelin and Octogesima Adveniens. And the focus of this report, the part 2, will be on Octogesima Adveniens. So what is this Octogesima Adveniens? This is the Octogesima Adveniens is an apostolic letter by Pope Paul VI, issued only 4 years after the Populorum Progressio. This document is yet centered again on social issues. Nevertheless, this presents something like a shift to politics rather than focusing solely on economic development. So the main focus of the document is politics. We saw in the previous reports from report number 1 until report number 7 that the focus is always centered on economics. So there are many talks about capitalism and those who are suffering because of the system of capitalism. So in this focus of the document, the question is why the shift? So to answer the question on social justice is no longer focused on development, and the situation has already become a global problem. In other words, there's a new consciousness awakening in this time period. So the social question does not only concern a few, but it is already became global. So as I said before, the previous reports focus on equality regarding the foothold in terms of development, especially on the fact of production. But in this letter, apostolic letter of Pope Paul VI, it is addressed to a cardinal, to a cardinal named Cardinal Maurice Roy. It is by then the president of the Council of the Laity and of the Pontifical Commission on Justice and Peace, and it is also written on the occasion of the 18th anniversary of the encyclical Rerum Novarum. So upon reading the document, or rather the source document that provided to us by Father Jones, which is the preferential respect of the poor, if I remember it correctly, and these are the important matters that I saw when I read the document. So some important points in the letter. So as I said a while ago, the main focus is the shift from economics to politics. The first is the focus from economics to politics. Some of the important points of people struggle for progress. Progress then becomes a somewhat criteria in acquiring what can be considered wealth. While wealth may be considered available, not all have the chance to acquire it because of the process of development. Yes, the development involves the capabilities of the nations to climb up the ladder to economic development. It explains the capabilities of nations in the sad truth wherein, while the whole world seems to have the system of development, not all nations have the capability to ride on the system of development of the world. Thus, the situation of poverty arises from the incapability of nations in the riding of current world government. So there is merong bagong system may system na pinaakyatan ng buong mundo towards this economic progress. But the thing is, not all nations have the capability to ride on. Hindi sila maka-keep up, or they cannot keep up in riding the tide, kumbaga. That's why maybe we can assume that the world countries na the one we used, so merong first world, second world, third world countries, and maybe third world countries, then we can say that they have the difficulty in riding on the ladder. So the second basis for political action, the important points, so basis for political actions. In this point of the document source, it was pointed out that in Octogesima Adveniens, inclusion of economic questions should be dealt with accordingly within a wider sphere of the political. It was emphasized that political actions needs to be based on a proper or appropriate concept or model of society. So Pope Paul VI then proceeded to discuss some of the social ideologies such as Marxist ideology, where it was explicitly claimed that it is not compatible with Christian approach. And so is the socialist movements, because they draw inspiration from ideology which is not compatible with the Christian faith. The, Furthermore, the basis that it pointed out lies in some strict limits to the kind of direction in which it indicates to take. Then it must of necessity restrict itself to examining general trends and promoting key Christian values. So according to Pope Paul VI, uh, political action, or rather the involvement in action by the people, should not always be in conformity with the socialist movements or ideologies, because they're not stemmed or in line with Christian values. And since Paul VI saw that the Spirit of the Lord at work in the world, he saw neither the church nor the papacy as the only source answers to the social justice problems of the world. Hindi niya, Paul VI did not include or did not primarily really focus that the church has all the answers or the papacy has all the answers to the social problems of the world, since the new consciousness is on the since the new consciousness has become very global. A wider sphere of handling these problems should also be born, so that all can ride on all can make solutions for these problems of the world. This emphasizes the focus of Paul VI in Christian values, which can be accessible to all, hindi lang uh, even though they're also unbelievers. We cannot say we can They can always say that the values we promote is for the common good. The Christian values that we practice they can also practice it. So this is what we can say when the Christian values that we say is accessible to all. So in these values, he proposed two approaches. So what are these two approaches? Mainly the deductive method, by which a universally valid social doctrine was applied to changing circumstances, and the inductive method, in which it involves dealing with different situations by reading the signs of times. So we can say that this is 1971, and the Second Vatican Council happened in 1963 to 1965, and up until now this method still holds true. Reading the signs of times and uh, universally valid social doctrine was applied to changing circumstances. So these two approaches, we can say that they go together. They go together. So they are reading the signs of times. This is to adapt in different situations. The third point is the respect for the poor. I said before that we are always saying in our church gatherings or proclamations that, or another rather our reflections, that we should have a preferential option for the poor. But in this letter, it is very particular that the term that was used is preferential respect for the poor. So here, preferential respect for the poor. So this idea comes from the Pope's insistence that even quality before the law can serve, even equality should say, even equality before the law can serve as an alibi for flagrant discrimination, continued exploitation, and actual contempt. The issue is how to help the poor and the powerless to take responsibility for their lives. Regarding this issue, it would also imply that the participation of trade union is important. And furthermore, maybe on as a concrete example, that respect for the poor Whereas when we do charity, of course, we can clearly see the act of giving help, or let's just say in this time period of COVID-19, that when we give relief, it is not it it is always on the part that when you give a relief, you just give it, then let's go to the other house, like that. But in this time, in this perspective, the Pope is insisting that it should not be done not only for compliance sake. It should be done in line with values and Christian values, not just only just fulfilling the act or just fulfilling the action or helping. That is, we can say, the giving the proper respect for the poor, not just we are doing charity works, or we are helping them take responsibility for their lives, not because we are required to, but we are embodying the gospel values. Third will be the role of trade unions. This is how what he also emphasized, the role of trade unions. Trade union Because trade unions represent the body of workers. So the main members of trade unions or labor unions also are the ones working.